Jerry, can you please? Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight. My name is Jean Marie Pena. I'm the chair of the Political Action Committee of the NAACP Arlington branch, and we're really excited to welcome you today to this workshop on ranked choice voting. As you may know, early voting is underway for the June 18th primary election, and I'm going to put a link in the chat right now that has more information on the election. But as many of you may know, ranked choice voting is going to be used to determine the winner for the County Board Democratic primary race in this election. And ranked choice voting will also be used to determine the winner for the County Board race in the November general election. So we just want to make sure that our community understands ranked choice voting and has confidence in this voting method. So today we invited a few of our community partners to teach us more about ranked choice voting. First, you'll hear from UpVote, who will give a presentation more generally on what ranked choice voting is. And then the Arlington Department of Voter Registration and Elections will give a presentation on ranked choice voting in Arlington, including how we came to use this voting method for county board elections in Arlington, how to mark your ballot, and how votes are counted with this method. And so we will leave some time at the end for question and answer. So if you have any questions that come up during the presentation, please feel free to add them to the chat. We also have some questions that were submitted during registration, so we'll be sure to bring those up during the Q&A session as well. And we will, of course, give audience members the opportunity to unmute and share their questions live if you prefer to do it that way too. And we are recording this event, so you can refer back to it on our YouTube page after the meeting in a few days. So before we get started, actually, so I do want to acknowledge that Susan Cunningham, one of our county board members, is joining us tonight. And so, Ms. Cunningham, I did want to give you some time to address our audience and see if there's anything you wanted to share before we got into the presentation, particularly about ranked choice voting and the county board's decision to adopt this voting method for county board elections. So I'll just give you a few moments to share if there's anything you wanted.
Sure. I think you're going to learn a lot more from the experts on the call later, but I can share both greetings from the county board and a little bit of context. I think we had our first experiment with ranked choice voting during the primary last year, and in our vote earlier this year, our direction was to carry it forward both in the primary this year and in the general, so that we can start to get sort of the muscle memory of using the same method each time. So we have not finalized a decision for ongoing generals, but anticipate doing so after this general, and presumably everything will go well. And I would also add that we are, for those of you who voted last year, we could only rank 3 with the current system that we have, and we are due for an upgrade of our voting system in 25. So we will be considering expanding that going forward as part of the RFP. But happy to hear the conversation today and to join you at the end for questions.
Thank you so much. We're really glad to have you here. So with that, I'll invite Liz White up, the Executive Director of UpVote, to just tell us a little bit more about ranked choice voting.
Great, thank you so much. I expanded my screen and then I couldn't find the unmute. Thank you all so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be doing this in Arlington again, and to be part of the voter education efforts. Arlington really did such an exceptional job running and participating in the state's first publicly held ranked choice voting election last year. It has given the rest of the state really something to aspire to. Other localities that we're advocating in really have looked to Arlington and Arlington's staff and candidates and board and voters as an example of how this can work. So thank you to everybody who has had a part in this. I just want to run through how ranked choice voting works, very generally, what it is, what kind of to expect, why UpVote Virginia spends time advocating for it. And then I will turn it over to your local elections folks who are the experts on Arlington elections and how this will specifically work for you all. So ranked choice voting, it's just a different way to tabulate votes. We refer to it as a simple change to the ballot that provides a better voter experience, better campaigns, and ultimately better government. All it means is that you as a voter get to look at a list of options, and instead of just picking one, you get to pick backup choices. You get to say, this is my first choice. If I can't have that one, I'll take this one. If I can't have that one, this is my third choice. That's it. It's something we do in our everyday lives. If we go to the grocery store and they're out of our favorite ice cream, we rank our second choice. My 6-year-old, apropos of absolutely nothing, will tell you her top 5 favorite Starburst colors, My Little Pony characters, et cetera, et cetera. We know how to do this. So this just allows voters a more nuanced and thorough way to express their preference on the candidates. So the goal of ranked choice voting, especially in a year like this where we're only electing one person at a time, the goal is to identify the candidate who has the support from the majority of voters. So 50% plus 1 vote, just over that threshold. And the way we're going to get there in a crowded field is like this. So here's our hypothetical 3-way race for 1 seat. In round 1, you see that candidate A in that navy blue has 40% of the vote. Candidate B in that pretty little peach color has 25% of the vote. And candidate C with the brighter blue has 35% of the vote. So in a traditional election, candidate A would win. And I think we're pretty conditioned to the way we've been doing this. I mean, go, 40% in a 3-way race. That's not so bad. But really, all we know from this amount of information is that 60% of the electorate voted for someone who was not candidate A. That's all we know. So ranked choice voting is going to keep going with this, and we're going to learn a lot more about voter preference. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to take the candidate. This is first choice votes. No one has looked beyond that at this point. We look at the first choice votes. If someone had hit 50%, Gretchen and her team would have gotten to go home early. Election's over. No ranking needed. No ranked choice tabulation needed. But that didn't happen in this case, and it doesn't happen in these crowded fields very often. So what we're going to do is eliminate the candidate who got the fewest first choice votes. And in this case, it's candidate B. So now we're going to count it all again. If your candidate is still in the race, if you voted for A or C, your vote is just going to count for that candidate again. But if you voted for candidate B, we don't want to eliminate you from the conversation. We want to know still what your preference is. So in this scenario, 15% of that 25 ranked candidate A second, and 10% ranked candidate C second. So we're going to redistribute those votes accordingly. And now it looks like this. So candidate A still wins. And sometimes I get the question, why bother? But what we have so much more information now. So now we know that 55%, at least 55% of voters feel good about candidate A. Maybe they weren't their first choice, but they feel good about it. Now you have candidate A who is a more representative elected official. So that's the kind of gist of how it works. It's very similar. The other name for it is instant runoff voting. So it's just like these runoffs that you'll see in places like Georgia, without running a whole separate election, without making everybody come back 4 weeks later. It is a runoff on paper. You fill out one piece of paper and you still get to have your preferences honored. So there are a lot of benefits to RCV, and I'm going to cruise through them a little bit, but I'm happy to stay for questions at the end. But I don't want to take time away from the actual Arlington practicality part of this evening. But the biggest benefit with RCV is that it ensures a majority winner. The more crowded our candidate fields get, the less likely we are to just get a straight out majority winner on that first ballot. A bigger field of candidates for voters, that should just be good news. We should want to have more options more choices, more different perspectives in a conversation, more brain power on solving problems. But our current electoral system, well, not your current electoral system because you have ranked choice voting, but more traditional voting just isn't built to support that. And it often leads to someone winning with 27% of the vote, or 30% of the vote. And again, all we know is that means a lot of voters, the vast majority of voters, wanted somebody else. So this is a way to identify that majority winner and make voters feel more represented, especially in a primary, especially in a crowded primary. What we also often see is that you get more fringe candidates to the right and to the left across the country, and they have a base, right? They have, maybe it's 30% or whatever, but they have a base. They also have a ceiling. That's the only kind of voter that wants them. This is a safeguard against candidates like that who are polarizing and who are divisive. Because if you're not going to get those second choice votes, doesn't matter where you are on the first ballot. Benefit 2, the flip coin of that is that ranked choice voting rewards candidates who build consensus. That's how you get to that majority. So candidates, and Susan can probably speak to this because she did a really great job last year, candidates have to get out of their safety zone. You have to get out of your neighborhood and out of your normal, usual base of voters, and you have to talk to different voting blocks, people who don't look like you, people who don't live near you, people whose kids go to different schools than yours. You cannot rely on just one voting block. It won't be enough. So it encourages a more nuanced approach to policy issues. It leaves space, I think, for more nuanced conversations, especially in a primary. And once a candidate is elected, governing is easier because they have already built those relationships and built those coalitions and understand the community. Benefit 3, ranked choice voting diminishes negative campaigning. If you are in a ranked choice voting election, it takes away that zero-sum game feel. So I can't go to my opponent's voters and badmouth my opponent, because all I'm doing is alienating that block of people. What I really should say is, oh yes, I also like Gretchen, but I hope you'll consider voting for me second. Because then if Gretchen's eliminated first, now I have those votes. I didn't alienate them by trying to say mean things about Gretchen. If you look at Alaska, you have this crazy Sarah Palin race, which I could do a whole separate hour on, so I won't get into details. But the people who lost basically lost because they treated the election like a regular election, and they went scorched earth and just alienated their closest contenders' voters. So ended up not getting enough second choice votes. Benefit 4, ranked choice voting eliminates spoilers. And that means a couple different things. The biggest thing it means is that you as a voter can vote with your heart, and you don't have to be a pundit. Candy Bradshaw from the League of Women Voters called this honest voting, and I loved that so much. You don't ever have to feel like you're wasting your vote. If you vote for a non-front runner candidate because they speak to your heart and they speak to your values, you're not going to be out of the conversation. Even if they're eliminated first, your preferences still get to be impactful. The other thing that it means is that two similar candidates, whether that's ideologically similar, demographically similar, geographically similar, they are not going to hurt each other's chances and split the vote. So again, we don't have to be pundits, and that cuts down on gatekeeping. Because the parties or whoever the decision makers are not going to say, oh, I'm so sorry, we already have a candidate like you, better luck next time. Which leads really well into benefit 5. Ranked choice voting has been shown to benefit candidates and communities of color. And a lot of it is the things we just talked about, the non-vote splitting, the non-gatekeeping, and the diminished negative campaigning lowers the threshold to entry for different kinds of candidates to get in the race, because negative campaigning disproportionately affects women and candidates of color and younger first-time candidates. And if that is not a factor you have to consider when you're deciding to take the huge leap of running for office, that just makes it a lot easier for different kinds of folks to get involved, which gives us more voices in the conversation and is ultimately really good for everybody. So I know I ran through those real fast. Again, I am happy to take questions at the end, but I can hand it back over to Jan Marie.
Thanks so much, Liz. So now I'll actually pass it over to Gretchen Rainmeyer, the Director of Arlington Department of Voter Registration and Elections, to share more about how ranked choice voting will work in Arlington.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be here for Ranked Choice Voting Part 2, as I'm calling it in the office. Before we get started, Tanya's still bringing up the presentation. So I wanted to start with a quick, Tanya, can you present? I'm still seeing. There we go. So we wanted to start tonight by just doing a quick check-in with how's everybody feeling about ranked choice voting? So we wanted to give you the opportunity to, if you don't have to do this, but in the chat, you can put your emoji of how you're feeling. So one of the things we noticed last year is that voters had a range of emotions or feelings about ranked choice voting. I feel like we saw literally every emoji in the emoji dictionary. And so some people really loved it, some people really hate it, some people are just really confused. So like I said, if you want to put it in the chat, it'll help us, but if not, no pressure. But it's helpful to know kind of where the community is at as we start moving forward with Ranked Choice Voting Part 2. And I will say this is our first outreach event for the June primary, and we'll need to do a lot more going into the November election. So kind of gauging where we are as a community will help inform future outreach events. So a quick, what we're going to talk about tonight, let's go to the next slide. And I apologize, it's not in presenting mode, but that's, we'll, yeah. Okay. So a little bit of what we're going to do tonight. Sorry, Tanya. I'm still seeing the emoji slide.
You may need to stop share and reshare. Sometimes Zoom glitches a little bit.
Sorry. Technical difficulties. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing your emoji. I appreciate it.
It shows that it's sharing on my screen, so let me try again.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see it?
I can see it. It's still not doing the presenter mode though.
Okay, it's in presenter mode on my computer.
Fascinating. It's okay. We can just roll with it. So over tonight, we'll be doing an introduction. Then we're going to go in the basics, talk about a little bit about what the ballot looks like this time. We're able to make some formatting adjustments to make it a little bit easier to vote, we think. Ranked choice voting tabulation, explain what's different this year from last year, and then we'll talk about the results and answer any questions. So first we'll do introductions. My name is Gretchen Reinemeyer. I am the Director of Elections / General Registrar here in Arlington County. Also tonight we have Tanya Griffin, our Outreach and Communications Coordinator, and Alyssa Myers, who is our new Deputy Director for the office. On to slide 5. We wanted to give a brief overview. Is it not fast forwarding? Is it not forwarding slides at all, Tanya?
It looks like it is on my screen. I don't know what's going on.
Hey, Tanya,
feel
are you
like
using multiple monitors?
Yeah, it's
No, I
there.
only have one monitor.
Oh,
It's-
okay.
So just a quick on the election that we are running right now is a dual party primary being held on June 18th, and the hours on election day are 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So it is a dual primary, meaning we are running a primary for both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So on the Democratic primary, we have just the one office, the county board seat. And we have 5 candidates running for 1 open seat, and that ballot is using ranked choice voting. On the Republican primary, you're voting for U.S. Senate, and I believe there are 4 candidates running, and that's just the traditional voting method. So an important thing to know so early voting is ongoing right now. We started on Friday, so you can come vote anytime between 8 and 5 at our courthouse location. And then we'll have expanded hours starting June 8th. So we'll be open 2 Saturdays and a Tuesday and Thursday that last week before the election, if for some reason you aren't able to come in on June 18th to vote. So can you show the sample ballots, slide 6?
Switched over. Is it showing up? It's on my computer.
You can stop presenting, Tanya, because what we're seeing is just the normal screen, so that might be helpful. Yes. So here's a little bit about what the 2 ballots look like. So I apologize, there are 5 candidates for the U.S. Senate. And then so on to the next slide, the dual party primary. So a couple of key dates. We do have a voter registration deadline before every election. So the deadline to make any changes to your name or address or register is May 28th. A couple of things to note this year. If you know anybody who will be 18 by the general election on November 5th, they can vote in the primary elections when they're still 17, as long as they'll be 18 by the general election. And Virginia does now have pre-registration starting at the age of 16. So we do make an effort to hit, or the League of Women Voters does do registration at every Arlington high school, public high school. So if you do know anybody in that 16, 17 to 18 year age range, it's not too late to get them registered. So after the voter registration deadline in Virginia, we start what is called same-day registration. So even if you miss the deadline to make any changes to your registration, you can still register after the fact, but you'll be voting on something called a provisional ballot. And basically, we just hold these until after the election, until we have time to adjudicate them and make sure that they were cast in accordance with the laws. And then the electoral board will make the determination of whether to accept that or not. So the deadline to request a mail ballot, any voter in Virginia can vote by mail, is June 7th. And ballots must be postmarked on or before June 18th and received in our office by June 21st. And you can always return your mail ballot in person or to a drop box. We have 9 throughout the county. Next slide, please. So every in-person voting place, whether early or your neighborhood precinct on election day, has assistance for voters who might need assistance. So we do offer curbside voting at every polling location. Voters can look for yellow cones, and then and that designates the area where curbside voting is taking place. When they get there, they can call the phone number on there, and we will ask some basic info. We'll need to get your name and your address, just so we know to check you in and make sure what ballot we need to bring out to you. And then we can bring a ballot out to your car, you mark it in your car, and then we return it into the voting booth where we'll go ahead and cast it for you. And we also offer every voter who needs assistance, they can bring in their own assistant. And they'll need to fill out a request for assistance form. And so this can be if you know somebody who might need help with ballot translation or something like that. You can either offer to assist the voter, or that voter can bring in their assistant. Next slide, please. Thank you. So when you come to vote in a dual primary, don't be surprised if we ask you which election you want to vote in today. So Virginia is an open primary state, meaning that we don't register by party. And because we have 2 elections running simultaneously right now, you only get to vote in one. So we need to know which ballot you would like, the Democratic or the Republican party primary ballot. So don't be surprised if you are asked that when you go to vote this June. So ranked choice voting in Arlington 2.0, the process is very similar to voting a traditional ballot. When you come in to vote, you'll just be given that one sheet of paper this election. Only the county board race in Arlington is using ranked choice voting, and that is because Virginia law only allows use of ranked choice voting in that county board race. Next slide, please. So we want to do a quick tabulation. For those of you who attended an outreach event last year, this is similar to, but we have now updated from ice cream to desserts, our sweet treats. And so we'll go through a quick tabulation exercise to show you a little bit about how different ballots are marked, and how that might lead to them being counted through this tabulation process. So a couple of changes on the ballot this year is you'll notice that we put in some grid lines. Some of the feedback we had from voters last year is that it was hard to see the ovals. So we did work to get in those horizontal grid lines to hopefully make it a little bit easier for voters. We weren't able to change everything about the ballot though. So you can only rank up to 3, even though we have 5 candidates running. And you're only allowed to make 1 ranking per column. So even if so in this ballot, you can see they voted for 3 different things as their first choice. We're not going to be able to accept that ballot. That ballot would be rejected because we don't know what your preference is. Next ballot. So here, this would also be considered a ballot marking error. You can see they really like stiffy toffee pudding. So they ranked it first, second, and third. And the reason, this is, the machine will accept this and we will be able to count this ballot. But this doesn't increase sticky toffee pudding's chance of winning. Because if stiffy toffee pudding is eliminated in that first round, your ballot is not transferred to any other desserts. So next slide. So we're going to do a quick quiz, and it's a little bit hard to do some interaction in these virtual meetings. So if you feel like putting into the chat, you can, but no pressure. You can just say it to yourself while you're sitting at home. So let's go to the next slide. So here we have a voter who has ranked praline blondies second and sticky toffee pudding third, but they didn't rank anything first. So the question is, how do you think their ballot will be counted? And if you said their second and third choices are bumped up to their first and second, you would be correct. So this is what's called a skipped ranking. So it believes so it goes to the next highest ranking. So praline blondies would become the first choice and sticky toffee pudding becomes the second choice. On to the next example. So here we have a voter who's just voted for oatmeal chocolate chip cookie. That's all they wanted to vote for. So how is this ballot going to be counted? So if oatmeal chocolate chip cookie is eliminated first, then this ballot is what's called inactive. It's just not included in any additional rounds because there are no more candidates or desserts still in the running for favorite desserts. The next ballot, so we have praline blondies voted first, second, and third. Once again, this ballot is going to be treated the same way that ballot that we just looked at is. So praline brown, your vote will go to praline blondies in your first choice, but if that treat is eliminated, then it is not, your ballot is inactive. There's no more treats for it to go to. So whether you rank it 3 or 1, it's going to be treated the same. So here we have somebody who ranked 3 things as their first choice. Do you think this is going to be accepted or rejected? Are we able to count any part of this ballot? If you said, no, we can't accept it at all, you would be correct because we don't know what your first choice is when we look at that. So next, I want to go into a little bit about how ranked choice voting is tabulated. And this is very similar to how it was done last year, but it's a little simpler. So once again, we need to establish a threshold. So how many votes does a dessert need to get in order to be determined the winner? So we're only electing 1 seat this year. So that means that the candidate who wins needs to get 50% of the vote plus 1. And this is the same formula that was used last year when they only needed 1/3 of the vote. And what we do is on the next slide, you can see it's calculated by taking the number of ballots cast for the office divided by the number of seats that need to be filled plus 1. So we're only electing 1 seat this year. So it's going to be all of the votes cast divided by 2 and then plus 1. So they just need to get 1 vote over 50% in order to get a majority of the votes in this election. So how counting works is we'll eliminate all of first choice votes are counted in the first round, and those are the votes that are reported election night. If no candidate has reached 50% of the votes in that initial first count, then the candidate with the fewest number of votes is eliminated, and we look at the second choice votes for only those ballots from that candidate who is eliminated, and they get redistributed to the remaining candidates. And we do that same process of eliminating the candidate with the lowest number of votes and redistributing just those votes until we have a candidate that crosses the threshold. So let's look a little bit about how this might look in an actual exercise. So we're going to tabulate a race using our favorite desserts. And let's go ahead and get to, so in our election, we have 24 ballots have been cast and we're electing 1 dessert. So we're going to take 24 divided by 2 and plus 1. So that gives us 13 votes. That's how many votes a dessert needs to win. So after the first round of tabulation, here's where the results stand. We can see Sugar Cookie has 4, Praline Blondies has 6, Oatmeal Chocolate Chip has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's in the lead right now. Sticky Toffee Pudding at 3 and Brownies at 2, my favorite. So I'm disappointed already. So after the first round, we're going to look at the 2 votes that were cast for Brownies, and we're going to transfer those votes to the second choice. So in the case of Brownies, you can see that their second choice was Praline Blondies. So their votes are just getting switched to Praline Blondies. So in the second round of tabulation, you can now see Praline Blondies has picked up those 2 brownie votes. So they now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they are gaining on Oatmeal Chocolate Chip Cookie right now. So the next dessert that we're eliminating is that Sticky Toffee Pudding with 3 votes. And you can see in the next round of tabulation, round 3, 2 of those votes have gone to Praline Blondies and 1 to Oatmeal Chocolate Chip Cookie. Moving forward to round 4 of tabulation, we're eliminating Sugar Cookie and we are redistributing. So 3 sugar cookies went to Praline Blondies and 1 to Oatmeal Choc Cookie, which means that the Praline Blondies has reached the election threshold of 13 with support from Brownies, Sticky Toffee Pudding, and Sugar Cookies. So this final results tabulation, we will be doing that Friday after the election. It won't be final. We'll still have outstanding provisional votes, but we do believe we'll have most votes in by that Friday after the election, where we'll be able to run the rounds of tabulation similar to what we did last year. But we do say it might take up to 7 days to know the winner of an election. That is true in all elections. We have 7 days to canvass the votes. So anytime it's a tight race, it will take us a couple of days to ensure that we've gotten all of the votes counted and allocated correctly. And for anyone who wants to stay up to date with our electoral board meetings or any election news, you can subscribe to our email newsletter by going to the link and clicking on the subscribe to the email newsletter. So with that, we can open it up for questions. I'll turn it back over to Jan Marie and we can go to questions if you want, or yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Gretchen. So if we can just pull up all of our panelists. So if we can get Liz up on the screen as well as Ms. Cunningham, that would be great. This is our question and answer portion. So please feel free to put questions in the chat. I've seen some comments, but no questions yet. And feel free to virtually raise your hand if you would like us to call on you so you can unmute. But while we tee up some questions, since we are really lucky to have a county board member here tonight, I did want to ask some questions about the why of ranked choice voting in Arlington. So, Ms. Cunningham, if you could speak to, we heard a lot about the benefits of ranked choice voting from UpVote, but we do have a range of emotions about it, as you can see from the chat. So if you could just speak a little bit more to why the county board felt that this was the best voting method for county board elections in Arlington, that would be great.
Sure, I'd love to. So I think it is pretty widely recognized that that our elections are getting more and more difficult, and sort of some of our community dialogues in the world are getting more difficult. And I think one of the big reasons to consider ranked choice was to try to push back against that a little bit so that all voices could be heard. Everyone could vote their conscience clearly, and there wasn't sort of all the gamesmanship of, should we only have 2 candidates or should we have 12? So that really the intent being to open up the field so that all who are interested could run and everyone could share their voice. And I think the previous county board elected to go whole hog and full forward into it, with starting with a 2-seat election, which made it even harder than it really needed to be, probably. So I think you'll see these next 3 years are actually much easier because it's not as much math to follow. Gretchen's team, with Liz's support and many others, just rocked it anyway. But I think for all of us, anytime there's a change in election procedures, it kind of gives you some question. But the real goal here was to be as fair as possible, to be inclusive as possible, and to over time encourage more and more candidates and a positive conversation amongst candidates.
Thank you. I did have one follow-up question too. So we have had some members express some apprehension about ranked choice voting. So what would you say to voters who are not feeling 100% confident in this voting method?
Yeah, so I think this year's primary in general will be much more straightforward, and that it really does feel like an instant runoff and not too complex. I would say before we do a multi-seat election again, I think we all have a little bit more education and kind of muscle memory to build. We had, in some ways, I think with a 2-seat race, we had done in the Democratic Party caucuses, we had done things with a similar but different way of calculation, which is also seems intuitive and fine, but Liz can educate us on why it's not the best way to do it nationally and internationally. So I think for a lot of people, it was the 2-seat was not only hard because it is harder, but because we had done it similarly but different in the past. And so people thought they understood it when maybe not everyone understood it correctly. So it's the critical thing for that 2-seat election is you get one whole vote, and your one whole vote will be used, but it may only be used to hold one of those seats. You don't get one whole vote for 2 different seats. And that was the source, I think, of the most consternation and confusion. But Liz probably can say much more elegantly than I can, because I quizzed her multiple times throughout the process, why that is the gold standard internationally for doing multi-seats.
Susan, I do want to say that I'm a precinct captain in Park Lane, which is the most populous precinct. And I've been through several trainings, including the ice cream training, and it is still difficult for us to understand RCV. And even for us, as much training as we get, how to explain it to the average voter. So what are you guys doing as board members to explain it to them?
Yeah, so I think one of the pieces that we've been working on collectively is to try to amp up the communication of voter education, and particularly in a presidential election year, you've got a lot more voters who don't necessarily vote every year. So Gretchen's team's been, trying to make sure that we're really getting the word out about how to vote. And the board did put some additional funding in place to support that. We as board members are available anytime to come and talk with folks. And I know UpVote and Fair Vote and LCV and NAACP and others are doing continual trainings. We would be thrilled to partner and to have more of those at any time. Again, I think this year it will be a little bit more straightforward because there's just the plurality, the 51%, 50% plus one. But that's what we've been doing so far. It's a little bit of a delicate dance, and Gretchen's got to be very, very even across all races and parties and everything else, but the mechanics Gretchen can really emphasize. And then our team, along with the county manager's communications team, is ready to support in any other additional forums.
And
I'll
I
just
do
add-
want to say to thank Chris, because I know she's been doing a lot on
Amazing.
helping people understand RCV. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add, presidential elections it is extremely difficult and it always breaks my heart when I talk to voters and they just didn't understand the rules. And so that everybody on this phone call, you've taken the time to give us your Tuesday night. It means you're interested. And this is where we need you guys in our community. And Chris has done a really great job of this, of having these conversations with voters and letting them know their options. It's why we took a little bit of extra time to talk about things like curbside voting, voting by mail. And it's really making sure voters know what their options are here in Virginia. Laws change every year. I don't expect you guys to be experts, but anything you guys can do to help when you're talking to people just in the community, letting know their options. We are only a 9-person office and we cannot reach 180,000 voters without people in the community helping spread the word about what options are available to them. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. I see we have some questions in the chat, so I'll go in order. So Julie asked, if I only have 2 preferences, does not marking a third choice in any way hurt my number 1 choice?
I think this is such a good question, Julie. We often refer to, ranked choice voting means you just rank the candidates best to worst. And that, I think, is to get away from explaining it that way because it's not entirely accurate, right? Which also feeds into Mike's question about the number of rankings. The goal is not to rank everyone last. The goal is to say your top choices. So if you don't like a candidate, don't give them your vote in any ranking. If that is someone you don't want to see in office, don't fill in their bubble. So if there's only 1 candidate or 2 candidates that you support, you are completely within your rights and honestly probably using the system correctly to only rank 1 or 2 people. The goal is to give you as much of a say as possible. But some people are like, oh no, I don't like ranked choice voting. It forces me to vote for people I don't support. And it's not designed to. You don't have to show up to vote at all. You don't have to vote in that office. You certainly don't have to use all your rankings. All of it is by choice and meant to strengthen your voice, not force it in any direction. But and the other piece of your question, Julie, is third choice, or who it is in your third choice doesn't affect your first choice at all. You gave your first choice your vote, and as long as they stay in the running, your vote doesn't move from them. Your second and third choice don't even come into play unless your first choice is no longer in a position to receive your support. So no, RCV is very difficult, borderline impossible to game. You really can't strategize. That's why I love the honest voting idea. Really just go in and say, I like this person the best and I like this person second best, etc. And it really is that easy, which is refreshing.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Julie, it's really, so this is a common question in any election is, do I have to vote for everything on the ballot? No. If there's something you don't want to vote for, don't vote for it. We encourage voters to do the research before they get there, but if they don't like something on the ballot, they shouldn't be voting for it. That's perfectly within their rights as a voter. So
Thank you so much. The next question is actually from our president. So, President Heminger, did you want to unmute to share your question?
Yeah, I apologize. I'm leaving an airport, so if there's background noise, please accept my apologies. A couple questions, actually. I did put it in the chat, but if my memory serves me correctly, I believe the county board or somewhere along the line, someone saying that we were due for new machines. Maybe it was 2025, and I got the date wrong. So we'd love to hear an update on that. And then just for my own curiosity, just curious around what is the impact when voters can't rank all of the candidates on the ballot? This year, I believe we're ranking 5 candidates, or at least 5 candidates, and you can only rank the top 3 with the voting machines that we have. So I'm curious to just understand the impact on the election. Thanks so much.
So you are correct. We are slated to get new voting equipment next year. I think we can all agree adding new voting equipment to a presidential election might not be the smartest decision. So we will, like, the second the presidential election is over, we will start the process to get new voting equipment for Arlington County. And it's at the end of its life cycle. We had always planned to replace our voting equipment around this timeline. So we're just sticking to that timeline. And one of the factors that we'll do when we look for new voting equipment is to increase the number of rankings that will be allowed. In terms of what limiting the number of rankings does, it leads to a higher number of ballots being made inactive because rankings have been exhausted. And that's all very technical terms. So basically, if you could rank 5, so as we start going through the rounds, ballots start becoming inactive. So if we've already gone through your first, second, and third choice, then your ballot goes into what's called an inactive ballot. So increasing the number of rankings allows your ballot to stay active longer. But there isn't ranked choice voting. There just isn't a ton of data available for ranked choice voting that really analyzes ballots. So it's hard to know exactly how many ballots are impacted and made inactive because voters ran out of rankings or because voters didn't want to rank up to 3 candidates. And so it's just because it's not used in a lot of places, there isn't a great deal of data available to let us know what's going on with why ballots are being made inactive. So, yeah.
And I would also add that it's pretty typical for the number of rankings to be set by ballot design and by, offices like Gretchen's, and not based on the number of candidates in the race, where you can have, imagine these presidential primaries that we're going to probably see in 28, where you 2 open seats, and you're going to see 24 people running on each side. No one is going to expect voters to, go down 2 whole pages and rank everybody from 1 to 24, because it's just a matter of pick your top 6 or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, and there's a lot in ballot design to help that can be used to help guide voters and how to successfully mark their ballots. So this is something we will be looking into, and maybe even doing usability testing to try to get Arlingtonians' feedback before we do voting machine procurement. Because if there's are different tools in place available to help voters mark their ballot accurately and with this great the most confidence as possible, then that is something we'll be looking to do as a county, because that is our goal, that voters are confident when they're marking their ballots. So, yeah.
Thank you. And just a reminder, everyone, we have about 11 minutes left, so still have plenty of time for questions. So feel free to keep putting them in the chat. Also, if you want to raise your hand, we're happy to call on you too. But the next question is from Amy. So the question is, how did the percentage of not counted ballots for first choice, so for example, someone that marks 2 people, number 1 choice, compared to the percentage of ballots not counted in our last election that did not use ranked choice voting?
Amy, do you mind if I ask you to come off mute and explain your question a little bit more? Because I want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly.
Hi. Yeah. I'm basically trying to figure out like if there was a higher percentage of ballots that weren't counted because of ranked choice voting. I
Yeah.
expect that there was for the first time, but I just would like to know if you know the numbers on like the differences.
Yeah. So because our machines are programmed to they rejected ballots that were not marked correctly. So anybody who voted in person had the opportunity to mark a new ballot in a way that would allow it to be counted correctly. So we only saw this situation where voters had more than one ranking for the first choice in our mail ballot precinct, our absentee. And I don't have the number pulled up for me. Tanya, do you have that in the post-election report from the June election? It was a very small number. I want to say like 32 ballots out of all of the ballots cast in the primary last year, but it was a very insignificant number because when you cast a mail ballot, a lot of voters recognize that they made a mistake when marking that mail ballot, so they marked it in such a way that we could determine voter intent. And so for a vast majority of mail ballots that for whatever reason couldn't be read by the scanner, we could, yeah, so here's the, thank you, Chris, for pulling that up. So we had 228 mail ballots that contain errors, and that meant they weren't able to be read by the scanner. But from those 228, we could determine the intent of the voters on 187 of those ballots. So some quick math, if we do 13 plus 28 is 41 ballots that ultimately were counted as overvotes, 44. So yeah, and that, so it's a very small percentage because we had obviously not ideal. We want to make sure we're getting if somebody's going to take the time to vote, we want to make sure we're counting it. But I will say it's not uncommon for us to get ballots back where voters have freely expressed their opinion on how they want to mark their ballot in a way that makes it so that we cannot actually count it. Yeah, so it's always very fun to open up provisional ballots and read the notes that people have left for us on their ballots. So like I said, small percentage overall, but it does mean there's work to be done, especially in those mail ballots where voters don't necessarily have the opportunity to correct it like they did if they were voting in person. So, yeah. Does that
Thank
help
you.
you?
And I'm actually, oh, I'm sorry. Amy, was that helpful?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I would just also want to know how that compared to the last election where we didn't have RCV.
I don't have that number on the top of because we don't generally, it's the state doesn't report overvotes. We always account for them, but and I will say, so we started out early voting last year with a high number, a higher rate than normal of spoiled ballots. But because Virginia has 6 weeks of early voting, we were able to change the instructions we were giving to voters, and that greatly reduced the number of spoiled ballots we were seeing. So it is, like I said, we were able to figure out how we needed to explain things to voters in that 6-week period and make it so that by the time we got to election day, the number of voters that were making mistakes and marking their ballots was on par with any other election that we have. So.
Thank you. And I was gonna invite our branch president to unmute again because I believe he had a follow-up question.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And this is a tough question for our county board member. I know you weren't elected, but 2 Decembers ago, our branch was told by the county board that they had set aside money. I believe it was 50,000. Keep me honest, Madam Chair, to go towards voter engagement and outreach. In our own follow-up efforts, we discovered that that money was never actually given to the Department of Elections. They weren't actually able to use any of that money. I did hear you say that, we again this year set aside money, but for the members that are listening tonight, what confidence should they have, and how do we know that it won't be a repeat of what happened last year?
Yeah, and again, I wasn't here last year, but I have studied that a little bit. What happened last year was there was a conversation that said we'd be able to put that aside if needed. And then I think we asked, the electoral board and others what they needed, and we ended up using state level materials rather than creating new ones last year. So essentially we didn't need to spend that, or didn't have a way to spend it, so didn't. This year is different. It actually is in the budget, so building from that, Gretchen and several of us spent time very early in the year in January and February and said, what do you need, not just for ranked choice voting, but for voter education, to make sure that, we are in a presidential year that is, even more tense than some, perhaps, making sure that everyone in Arlington who wants to vote can and knows how to. And so the first pass of that, and Gretchen, you may be able to say more about the the specific numbers, because I don't have them top of my head, but the first pass was really making sure that there would be an opportunity to have printed materials that were specific to this election. That will include some education around ranked choice, but it's also much more about where's your precinct and how do you find it and when do you vote, and don't go to the early vote site on election day, which is the one that always gets me. So that's really the intent. And then we also brought together the communications team in the in the manager's office, in our office, with the election team, and said, where is help needed, and what can Gretchen's team do and what can't they do, because there are some bright lines there. And essentially, Gretchen can say more about the materials that are being produced, but that would also include, if there are community partners that would like to have access to those materials, or access to any and all of us at any time, we will be eager to make that happen, recognizing that Gretchen's team may get busier and busier in a year that we keep just having many different primaries and elections. So, Gretchen, you want to say a little bit about the number, like kind of the dollar figure, and what we budgeted for, how that will come out?
Yeah, so we did request additional funding just for voter education and outreach in a presidential election, so that we could, I mean, the goal is to be able to mail something to every voter in Arlington in advance of the election, letting them know their options and where they can get more information on ranked choice voting. And we are working with the communications department with the county now, because we have materials developed. It's just they probably aren't being leveraged in the way that we need them to. But I really can't emphasize the importance of having one-on-one our small group conversations with neighbors. I know last year after the primary election, I got invited to the neighborhood, my block party for 4th of July, with the explicit intention of me having to explain ranked choice voting to my neighbors, because they had just voted in the election. They had a lot of questions still. So like I said, anything we can do to help equip the people here with the information they need to have these conversations in the community, because it really just takes a lot of boots on the ground having these conversations. And we're a resource to help get you the answers you need. And I do hope that we are able to answer those questions, and that we are being responsive to any emails or phone calls when they come in. So, yeah.
And I would also, I think Dave Schutz mentioned earlier on that the one of the Democratic Party caucus activities that's ongoing right now for school board, they did shift so that they're using single transferable vote, which is a great relief to me, that we're not adding multiple different ways of doing things. And so you can get warmed up there if you plan to vote in that caucus. That's not Gretchen's office, but I think it is, as a community, trying to get some consistency so that there's not as much confusion. So glad that they were able to do that.
Yeah, we do have 2 school board seats up this year. That is an independent office in Virginia, so it cannot be a part of the party primary nomination process. So the Arlington Democratic Party runs an endorsement process outside of the primary. So that is running right now. So I believe it's running right now. Let's go to the Arlington Dems webpage
Exactly.
if you're interested.
But they are doing that one with single transferable vote, just like
Fair.
we did the county board election last year. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, please, if there are church groups or mosque groups or book groups or whatever that would like materials or, you know, a recording or somebody to come, apparently Liz and Gretchen only get invited parties to explain ranked choice voting, but that's
it
all
is
good.
pretty much how it goes these days.
We're really happy to do that. Or if you have ideas about how to better get that word out, we brainstormed and are planning some things, but it's not a perfect science. So,
Yeah.
and those one-on-one conversations are everything.
Thank you so much. So we are actually right at the end. I did want to acknowledge one last question that was Chris actually helped to answer. So Rachel asked, if a person mismarks their ballot with in-person voting, will the machine reject the ballot and allow for a new ballot? And the answer was yes. Is there anything that you would add?
No, so I really want to emphasize when you go to vote, take as much time as you need. You only get to vote once in an election. And fill in those ovals all the way. Don't use checks. We want to make sure we're filling in the ovals. But yeah, if the machine doesn't like the ballot as it's marked, so it's going to look for overvotes, then it will reject it. And then we'll just give you a new ballot to mark. We'll spoil that ballot that you've given us. And that's it. So yeah. And it happens to a lot of, like, don't be embarrassed if your ballot is rejected. Our voting machine technician, who probably votes more than anyone else in the county, had her ballot rejected one year. So any one of us can make a mistake when marking our ballots.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thanks to our presenters, Liz and Gretchen, and our county board member, Ms. Cunningham, for joining us for the Q&A. Just a little virtual round of applause for you, and to our audience as well for your amazing questions. Thank you so much. So like I mentioned earlier, a recording of this event will be uploaded to our YouTube page. So just be sure to look out for that in the coming days. And then I did want to plug that in 2 weeks, we will be having a county board candidate forum during our general membership meeting on May 20th. And so it'll help you learn more about the candidates who are running in this election that we're doing ranked choice voting for. So please join us for that as well. But with that, thank you all so much. And I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks so much, everyone.